Well, hi there, folks. This video is my warts and all account of my journey back into balsa building for the first time in 15 years. But how did it begin? A couple of weeks ago when I was bored, I saw one of these little wooden kits on a Chinese site, well, AliExpress as it happens, and I thought that looks cool. So like a fool, I bought it, and I think it's great fun. Anyway, little things please little minds, as they say. And I figured I actually quite like putting these little wooden kits together. So the next thing was this collection of bits. A little bit more expensive, but I don't think it was even 5 or 10 quid. Lots of bits there. And eventually it became this. And I just think, what a great piece of engineering. I could sit and watch it for hours. Quite fun to put together. A little bit challenging, and I like a challenge. Anyway, I figured I actually like putting little kits together, and it's many years since I put together a Balsa aircraft kit, probably 10, 15 years. There was either the Pinto that I put together first or the Wings Orion. So I lashed out and spent all of £25 on this one here. And I'm quite looking forward to putting it together. And winter's coming, weather is absolutely awful. A couple of days back we had 75-mile-an-hour winds. I don't think that's very suitable for flying RC planes. So a little balsa challenge might be fun. As I say, it's 10, 15, 20 years. I have in the meantime been putting together lots of foam board models and then a lot of little foamy chuck gliders. 15 of those and 5 of the small ones, including even one with 4 motors. But it's winter, little gliders aren't back in the shops until the spring. So it seemed logical to me to get into a bit of balsa building, as opposed to my usual foamy things. So after such a long gap, I'm pretty much a beginner at balsa. Now one of my friends has got a really good YouTube channel that details a lot of balsa building. I'll link it at the end, Cliff Harvey. So I'll obviously check that out for some tips. Now this video here is my balsa virgin journey and lessons I've learnt along the way. Now like a fool I thought the video was going to be maybe 30 odd minutes long, but in fact it's turned out much longer, so I'm going to split it into 2 or 3 parts. So the second part will be the covering. First part is basically putting the fuselage and the main spar together. Second part will be the covering. If you want to follow the journey, I'll link the other parts at the end, and it has been quite a journey. But let's start off first by looking at what you actually get in this box here. It's a Real Hawk model. I've discovered that's the name of the company. Not quite sure what it's called. Quite a small model, wingspan 580, weight 110 grams they say. And they do suggest what motor you can use with it and what servos. And they're suggesting a 2S 250 to 400 milliamp. So quite a nice lightweight, should be easy to fly. Probably a good beginner plane actually, probably a good beginner kit as well. The kit I bought is just the balsa version. I think it was about £25, but you can buy the complete kit with all the electronics and even the covering film. I've got very few high wing planes now, and I thought it would be nice to build something that's just going to float around and be really easy to fly. Let's get it out the box. Do we even get instructions or a plan? So let's have a look. Well, there are some instructions of some kind. Right, so what have we got? First off, let's see if it's in English. Yeah, what do you know? Instructions in English. That's what it's supposed to look like, and you can actually buy this with the covering supplied in the kit, but I've just bought the very basic cheapest thing because I've got some covering kicking around. But if you want to make it look like that, you can get that stuff with it, like I say. Instructions look pretty good. They're in English, step-by-step pictorial instructions. But they don't go into any detail about how you're supposed to hold it together or glue it together, and they don't go into any details about how you put covering on. So you will have to do some research, or even better, keep watching and learn by my mistakes. So I'm going to get myself a board so that I can pop the bits out. These laser cut panels. Now, if it's anything like the Ready to Fly that I bought, it wasn't particularly good quality ply, but maybe this is better. If you missed that, I'm still in the middle of my first almost Ready to Fly in several years too, which was a bit of a disaster because the prop mount exploded on the ground when I hadn't even flown the thing, when I was actually still building it. But anyway, I'm going to take my time, pop these bits out, try and leave them in kind of sets, because it's quite useful when you look at the instructions. As I discovered with those kits, it's quite useful to keep bits from certain panels all together, because when you're assembling it, it becomes much more logical that those bits all went together, well, mostly. Oh, and I forgot to say, what else have you got here? You've got some emery board sandpaper, obviously for tidying up the bits before you glue them. You've got some small hinges there for the elevator ailerons, control horns, a couple of little rods, and a couple of little locking things there for wire to connect ailerons and elevator, because you've actually got there the control wires. So pretty much everything you need to put it together, apart from the board to assemble it on and adhesive, and I think it's going to be fun. In fact, correction to my last about popping these out, I keep making corrections because just for a change I'm actually reading instructions and it says take down the parts from the board by knife. So I'm going to sort these out and then come back to you, don't go away. Right, so getting the laser cut pieces out from the boards was pretty straightforward. Definitely worth using a blade to help cut the little joins in some places because it is quite fragile stuff. And pretty soon I was ready to lay out bits. First thing I laid out was the parts of the fuselage. Now I've pretty much figured that I'm going to use CA on the bits that pop in, and then where possible, once it's tacked together, I shall run CA along the whole length of that groove. And in some places, the longer pieces, where the longer pieces go, like pieces of batten to reinforce the sides of the cockpit and the engine mounting area, then I will use wood glue and clamp it up for a couple of hours. So this is the stage where I am with the fuselage ready to go together. So let's get busy with the CA and the wood glue. Wish me luck. Well, this appears to be going together easily enough. The small intermediate bulkheads between the sides and the base of the fuselage just push into slots already laser cut, and I'm using a bit of CA on them to hold them in place. And I think it's the way to do it, but I put some cling film on here to stop my model sticking to my little wooden board here. It kind of appears to be working. Anyway, that's where we are at the minute. And also, as you can see, I'm using some of my sockets to hold it together while it's really going off. Well, I must say I'm enjoying this, but I can tell you one thing, it's very different to cutting up bits of foam board or using a hot wire on a foamy model and then a glue gun, because you get instant results with that. This is actually making me become more patient because, okay, the CA goes off pretty quickly, but using a wood glue you do have to actually wait a little while in between, so it's a lot more relaxing in a way. But I must say a balsa model also feels much more fragile than my foamies, so I think they're going to have to be careful with this one, and so light as well. Well, that's the fuselage pretty much put together. Just got to put the stabiliser on and the vertical stab and the rudder, and pretty pleased with myself. I only made one slight mess up. When I put these reinforcers in here, they should have been sunk in a bit lower so that that piece there sat on the top of it, but I've got around it. I just trimmed it so that it fitted in between. But seeing as how this is my first balsa build in 15 years or something, I think that's pretty good going. So next step is the exciting bit, putting the main spar together. So that's the jigsaw. It should be a wing. Well, that's better. I think I can understand how this goes together now, but I'm going to need my bigger board. One thing that's going to be interesting is this glue's on the front and then you have to use that as a template. It's beginning to look a little bit like a wing, and I've got the extractor fan on because apparently CA is not very good to breathe. Oh well, it's glued together quite nicely, but then I examined it and discovered mess up number 2, because I thought all these ribs were the same, but then I just noticed that there's one there with a notch in it, there's one there with an extra notch in it. In fact, they're the centre 2 ribs that support the aileron servo. I should have looked really carefully at this drawing, but anyway, you live and learn. It's not a huge catastrophe. Might have been useful if they'd actually pointed that out. Next tricky bit, or probably the most tricky bit of the whole build if you ask me, and I say I'm pretty much a novice balsa builder nowadays, is going to be to shape the leading edge. I can't say I'm looking forward to that, but anyway, we'll give it a go. Right, well, I've made a start on the trickiest bit and I'm still not sure if I'm doing it right. There are 2 bits of balsa here, one slightly wider than the other, and a strip you're supposed to glue along the front and then sand it down so that you get a nice round edge. But they're very unclear really about how you should do this. But I think I've got it right. Longer bit on the top. I'm gluing this edge first, and then I've got to glue the rest of it but around a curve, so it's obviously got to be fixed at one end before I can even think about gluing it round a curve. So not sure how that's going to go, but anyway, got to give it a go, all part of the fun. But I must say it's darn sight more difficult than little gliders where they give you a nice big foam wing, but sometimes you've got to challenge yourself. Right, well, having tacked the upper surface of that leading edge along the frame, I decided to take the clips off because I don't want to risk introducing a bend in the leading edge. Bends or warps in wings are not good, but I'm going to leave that for a good couple of hours now before I disturb it, and then think about trying to bend the curve round that rib. And I'll tell you what, I've never worked with CA before in model building, but when you get it on your fingers, it's not easy to get it off, and I've got loads of it on. Oh, it's vaguely coming off. It is awful stuff to work with. Give me a hot glue gun any day. Well, I've come up with this method for gluing the balsa strip along the leading edge. I don't know if it's right, but I've got some pins in, but the pins are to hold it, and I've discovered, as I suspected, I can't put CA where the pins are because it'll actually glue the pins in, as has happened there. So glue it at intermediate spaces, and when that's gone off, hopefully it'll hold it in place enough to glue the rest in. Well, hooray, that has actually worked. Super glued that on the front, and now I can get some wood glue underneath the balsa along the leading edge and clamp and glue those. I could use CA again there, but CA, apparently wood glue will be stronger for some of this stuff and it will reinforce it a bit, so I think I'm going to probably put wood glue along there, clamp them, and then think about doing the lower edge. Of course I've got a gap there now and I can just close the gap, but I'll let it go off some more, have a cup of coffee, and then this other piece of balsa is going to go nicely in there, and then I can think about shaping this leading edge. Yeah, I'm actually well pleased that that's actually working out. You never know till you try, do you? So it's clamped and glued with wood glue, but also along that seam there it's got CA, so it's well and truly glued, and plus I've also gone along with CA along these, so I think that should hold together. Don't really know what I'm doing, and the instructions don't make it very clear either, but as long as it doesn't fall apart, I'd say that's a win. As you can see, this side isn't yet glued down yet, but I've got CA holding this along here too, so it's well and truly secured with wood glue and CA. Should be okay. Of course, the exciting thing is going to be covering this, because it's about 15 years since I've covered a model. I can't remember how to do it. I think it will need a bit of research. Well, dare I say it, I'm actually quite impressed with myself. That's actually gone together quite well. And why not be impressed with yourself sometimes? I really wasn't feeling very confident about that. All I've got to do is shape this to suit the little template that they supplied, wherever it is, to give it a nice leading edge. Or if not, I think I might have a little tiny plane somewhere from those days 10, 20, 15 years ago when I did a bit of balsa work, where I can just go off and shim it down, which would probably be easier than sanding it. So I better check that out. But anyway, it's beginning to look like a wing. Well, I found my little planer, but to be honest, it wasn't any good at all. It would have taken me a week to actually take off the tiny little bit. The clamp here is broken, and sanding it with that little emery board would have taken a week to bring it down to a nice round curve. So I just used the blade, did it by eye, taking lots of shavings off, lots and lots of shavings and a bit of sanding. And if I was proud of myself before, I'm even more proud now. I just shaped it by eye to this lovely profile. So I'm really dead chuffed. And just now, out of curiosity, I thought I'll get the little template that they supply, because that's what they say you should shape it to, and I hadn't even tried it. And I thought I'll test it, and just by eye, and knowing what a nice curve of the front of an aerofoil is, I've actually got exactly what they said I should get. So I'm dead chuffed with it. It's lovely and smooth and fair. Basically, it's pretty much 100% now, even to the feel. I'm chuffed as nuts. Just by eye and shaving, thinking you're going to mess this up, and I didn't. Amazing what you can do if you try. Sometimes I even surprise myself. Next job, of course, is the covering stage, which I can't say I'm looking forward to, as it's been 10-12 years since I have. Now, as I said at the beginning, I was hoping this was just going to be one long video of this build and the maiden flight, but in fact, already so far, and I've not even got the motor on, it looks like it's going to be 40-45 minutes long. So I'm going to make this a part one and finish here, but if you want to see how the covering goes, and it was quite a learning experience, then please check out part two, which I'm going to link at the end of this one. But thanks for watching. Hope you found it interesting. But that's all for now. Hopefully catch you for part two. Bye for now.